Marine reacts to SCP-662, also known as the Butler's Handbell. It is object class safe, and is considered a teleportation SCP by TheVolgun. As always, I'm going to be leaving a link to the original video channel down in the description below, so go ahead and make sure that you check them out. As you can see, my hair is kind of all over the place right now. I just got out of the shower. Don't really know what to make it all for this bell, or the Butler's Handbell. In any case, let's go ahead and jump right into it. But before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, really does help me out a lot. Hit that notification bar right there. That way you get notified every time I do upload. Sometimes I'll upload twice a day. Now I'm typically working on them in the evenings and releasing them early the next day. That way when you all wake up, you have a fresh new video first thing in the morning. So without further ado, let's go ahead and see what SCP-662, also known as the Butler's Handbell, is all about.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Miller, and the SCP we're going to be looking at today is SCP-662. Object Class: Safe. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-662 should be kept in its red velvet-lined case and stored in high-value storage locker 23C located at when not being used for testing or other appropriate activities. The item itself is safe to handle and poses no known threats of any kind, though the effects generated could be considered highly valuable and variably powerful depending on how the SCP is used. Description: SCP-662 is a small silver handbell, 4 centimeters tall and 2 centimeters in circumference. The bell is missing its ringer. Within the inside of the bell, an inscription has been etched into the silver, reading, "Forever Mine, SJW." The bell is susceptible to damage, however, given its nature, destruction has been deemed unnecessary. As it is made of very pure silver, it requires regular polishing to remain without tarnish. When the bell is shaken, as if to ring it, a soft chime can be heard, although this does not come from the bell. A short, well-dressed Caucasian butler of self-proclaimed British heritage, calling himself Mr. Deeds, will appear from the nearest area not within line of sight, usually from around a corner. Mr. Deeds will address the ringer of the bell by their appropriate title and their last name, and ask what they desire. His knowledge of individuals' last names and titles is a mystery, as he himself will purport. See interview log 662L1 for further details.
Wait, so even he doesn't know how he knows it? Because says as he or the knowledge of individual last names and titles is a mystery, as he himself will purport. Using fancy words on me. So he doesn't even know how that works. So also from the line of sight, from around a corner, I guess it kind of gives me the effect, like, you know, when you see a movie, right, and there's like a butler. For example, Mr. Deeds, like that, the actual movie with Adam Sandler. Great movie, by the way. When he's first barely going into that big mansion, you see that the butler is immediately there, right? You weren't in his line of sight, but then as soon as the doors open, he's in your line of sight now. So I'm assuming that's kind of dealing with the whole butler type background.
Most reasonable requests given to Mr. Deeds will result in satisfaction. However, there are limits to what he can do. He is unable to produce very complex items such as sports cars, luxury homes, or personal jets. If he is allowed to leave line of sight and return, he is able to produce smaller, less complex items such as a ham sandwich, a glass of iced tea, or even more luxurious items like caviar or a brick of gold. A list of notable items the butler has thus far been able to provide to those who ring the bell may be found in Addendum 662A1.
So if he could bring you gold, for example, I mean, but is he teleporting to an area to get these things, or is he manifesting them? Because if he's manifesting, you make quite a bit of money, and this could actually be one way, I guess, in this case, the SCP Foundation to be able to get constant money.
Mr. Deeds will also perform menial tasks, such as washing vehicles, preparing food, and cleaning bathrooms. If a request is deemed unreasonable or impossible by the butler, he will kindly tell the ringer so and offer an alternative if one may be had. The butler is not immune to ill actions taken against him while in sight. He has been killed or injured in multiple tests and will remain either dead or injured until he is out of sight. Upon return with a ring of the bell, all previous injuries will have vanished and he will be groomed and well dressed in his uniform and ready for the next order. A more detailed explanation of the jobs he can perform and the limits to which he may be put can be found in the aforementioned interview log 662 L1. Test logs relating to his ability to heal himself and those of the properties of the bell may be accessed by any level 2 personnel or higher. All attempts to catch Mr. Deeds disappearing have failed, as equipment will either fail or he will find a suitable unobserved spot.
So they said his ability to heal himself. Now, healing and reincarnating or being born again, two completely different things. Kind of how we saw with obviously the Confinement series, but I know the Confinement series is just supposed to be a funny joke. But still, I mean, just you using that as a point of reference as far as incarnation, like if you like, so he can die and then come back, but he can also get injured, and if he doesn't die, heal then. Just want to make sure I got that clear. Also, he's giving me this James Bond type feel right now.
Addendum 662A1. Items and tasks requested and results. Items. Nearly any conceivable kind of sandwich. Human flesh has been requested as lunch meat and politely denied. Beverages. Also of nearly any kind. As with sandwich meat, human blood has been requested and denied. Pig blood, however, was served promptly. Still warm. A brick of 99.98% pure gold. Mr. Deeds produced a brick of 99.14% pure gold and apologized for being unable to provide the requested purity.
Okay, big part right there. Two things right now. As far as with the human flesh and the blood, the fact that he says no, he obviously has limitations on what he would be willing to do. I mean, not that he can do, but willing to do. Now, I don't know if this is some kind of pre-programmed. I mean, at least I feel like he's not a robot, but it seems like something that's already pre-programmed into him. And as far as if somebody did this, I have no idea. Then again, SCP Foundation, sometimes things are just the way they are. Now, the part about the 99.90% pure gold, I was only able to bring back a 99.14% gold and apologize for it. So I don't think he's manifesting it. I feel like he's actually getting it from somewhere, and he's able to teleport as soon as he's out of line of sight. Because otherwise, he would be able to either, well, I mean, he could technically still be manifesting it because he might know certain ingredients. But like for some things, for like say cars, if he were to manifest that, he would have to know every single little piece. And I feel like that's got a lot more pieces to it than the composition and chemicals that make gold.
Brick of 99.24% pure silver. A nuclear bomb, politely denied. A hand grenade of modern US military grade, which performed as expected in testing. A blue 1963 Corvette convertible, politely denied. The board game Monopoly, which Mr. Deeds won on the first playthrough. A Fabergé egg, politely denied. SCP, politely denied. A bouquet of fresh-picked red roses, and a bouquet of wild turnbusties. Politely denied. Turnbusty is not an actual known type of flower. Tasks.
See, at first I thought it was going to be along the lines of like he won't do anything that maybe requires him to do harm or bring harm to the person who ordered it. But then about the convertible, technically if he has to take it, like he's not manifesting, technically he's stealing and would be hurting someone financially. A Fabergé egg, I don't know exactly what type of egg that's supposed to be, but it was still declined. So I don't know if that was probably bad to someone or whatever it is. I don't know. I still haven't figured out if there's a pattern as to whether or not everything that he can do. I mean, obviously the complex, the least complex, but that in and of itself kind of has wide ranges as well.
Cleaning of Dr. Mirth's car performed to near perfection. Washing of dishes accumulated from a day's worth of meals from the cafeteria on level performed to much higher standards than usual. Trimming of Dr. Mirth's hair performed, but it turns out that Mr. Deeds is not in fact a very good barber. Washing of Dr. Mirth's laundry performed, and the clothing found to fit better in Dr. Mirth's estimation. Assassination of Osama bin Laden politely denied. Mr. Deeds claimed bin Laden was too well guarded and entrenched, but could not or would not give further details. Assassination of a D-class individual a room over, performed with vicious precision using a buck knife to the throat.
Okay, so he can hurt people, but depending on the situation, say with Osama bin Laden, if he's too well guarded, he's just gonna die. I mean, he can come back, but I have no idea. Maybe the task itself has to be simple. Like as far as getting a car. But I mean, then again, he could steal a car, right? And then obviously the one with Osama bin Laden, obviously being well guarded. I don't know. There's still haven't found a pattern. Because obviously he killed the D-class personnel pretty easily.
Note: further tests with regards to Dr. Mirth's personal effects are to be forbidden unless approved by one level 05 overseer. You have been warned, Dr. Mirth.
Thank you.
Interview logs. Interview 662 L1. An interview with Mr. Deeds, an entity associated with SCP-662.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Dr. Mirth. How may I be of service? Firstly, may I have your name? Certainly. You may call me Mr. Deeds. Is that your real name? It is not my birth name, no, sir. What would that be? And where were you born? Unfortunately, I cannot remember my full name, sir, nor am I positive of my birthplace, though I do believe it to be located in England. Do you recall when you were born, Mr. Deeds? I am truly sorry to disappoint again, sir, but I do not recall that either. Though it must have been some time ago, for I don't believe I was born in this era. Can you approximate it? Again, sir, I apologize for my lack of self-knowledge. I'm a bit of a shut-in, as you know. What is the earliest mode of transportation that you can recall seeing in person or utilizing from the past? Horse and buggy, sir, although bicycles were just becoming a fad with the weather, if I recall correctly. Quite took off, didn't they, sir? You needn't call me sir any longer. I appreciate it, but it's becoming a little grating. Very well. Why do you suppose you cannot remember these things? I can't quite say. Or is it that you may, or will not say? That may be the case, yes. Perhaps I may not say, though, again, begging your pardon, I do not recall why that is. Very well. Moving on. Where is it that you go to when you fetch items for those you serve? Well, you see, I do not actually recall that either. Why do you wince when I ask these kinds of questions? I do not know. Never mind that for now. We'll get answers eventually. Now then, I have a request. Very well. How may I be of further assistance? I would like a glass of iced tea, and grab a glass for yourself if you like. What kind of iced tea would you prefer? Surprise me. Certainly.
Mr. Deeds stood and walked to the door of the interrogation room and tried the handle. Finding it locked, turned and smiled at Dr. Mirth.
What seems to be the problem? I must leave your presence to do as you request. Why is that? It just is, Dr. Mirth. Okay. Open the door, Agent Graves.
Mr.
I think you just perfectly described the SCP lore in a nutshell. Just how it is. And also, I've been wondering if, after you ring the bell, right, and he comes, does he stay there? Or does he go away after the task? I don't know if I've heard them say that yet. Obviously, after he gets out of your line of sight.
Mr. Deeds left the room. He proceeded down the hallway under video surveillance via camera and Agent Graves. He paused momentarily at another door, shook his head, looked up at the camera, and then at Agent Graves. Then he ran down the hallway and rounded the corner. Agent Graves did not follow, as he had been instructed to remain on guard at the door of the interrogation room. Still under camera surveillance, Mr. Deeds proceeded quickly down the next hall and continued throughout the halls of the complex, presumably searching for an exit or area not under surveillance. Finally, he stopped halfway down Corridor 2D. At this point, all 3 cameras in Corridor 2D malfunctioned, including 2 that were hidden. Exactly 3 minutes later, the cameras resumed normal functioning, revealing Mr. Deeds standing in the same position, but with a tray holding 2 glasses of iced tea in hand. He then quickly made his way back to the interrogation room.
You've returned. I was beginning to worry. My apologies for the delay, sir. Finding a way out was troublesome, but not to worry. I brought the tea just as you asked. I do hope you enjoy it. What kind of tea is it? A Southern-style sweet tea.
Mr. Deeds placed a glass in front of Dr. Mirth and resumed his seat at the other end of the table. Dr. Mirth hesitantly sniffed the tea, smiled, and took a sip.
Quite good, Mr. Deeds. In fact, this is perhaps the best sweet tea I've ever had. Delicious. Did you make it yourself? I do dislike disappointing you, Dr. Mirth, but I do not recall. I assume that I did, but alas, my mind is not what it used to be. You've only been gone about 10 minutes, Mr. Deeds. Are you telling me that your memory is so terrible that you cannot remember what happened 10 minutes ago, or the time in between? I recall looking for a way out, and I recall returning with the tea, but that is all. But not how or where you acquired the tea? Unfortunately, no. Very well. I have another request. As you wish. I would like a bar of gold. What percentage of pureness would you like? 99.98%, if you please. That may be possible. Let me see what I can do. We'll disable the cameras in the hall outside, and Agent Graves will wait in the interrogation room with me to make your trip a little faster this time. Very much appreciated. Shall I? Yes.
Mr. Deeds exited into the hallway, where, despite what Dr. Mirth claimed, the cameras were not turned off. He paused for a moment, looked up at the closest camera, shook his head, and began traveling through the hallways of the complex as before. In Corridor 2B, he paused, and once more all cameras hidden or visible in the corridor malfunctioned. Exactly 10 minutes and 37 seconds later, the cameras began functioning again, to show Mr. Deeds once again in the same position, with a bar of gold in one hand. He then returned to the interrogation room.
That took a little bit longer than last time. Any reason? Well, it seems that the cameras in the hallway remained on, so I had to find a suitable way out again. I do apologize for the delay, sir. Also, I was not able to acquire a bar of gold to the pureness that you requested, but I assure you that this bar is 99.14% pure. Very impressive. We'll be testing it, I'm sure you know. I did not know that you would, but it makes sense, I suppose. Will there be anything else, Dr. Mirth? Yes. For your next task, I would like you to acquire for me a blue 1963 Corvette convertible. I am quite sorry, but that is not possible. Why not? I really want one. Again, I cannot...
Alright, so I just realized that they're going through the list of the things that he couldn't do and all that. So I'm assuming eventually you're going to get to the Osama bin Laden part as well, too, and the D-class personnel. So no concrete, or not even a guess as to maybe why he can't remember not only what he does, or I mean where he gets the stuff that he gets, what's kind of the conditions of what he can and can't take or bring. Kind of just what his overall existence is. I mean, is it just helping people? I mean, is it only people that he'll help? Would he help SCPs, at least the ones that can talk?
Say why, except that I just know one cannot be gotten via my methods. And what are those methods? I do not recall, sir. Very well. I would like a Fabergé egg. Any will do. Ah, well, regretfully, that is impossible as well. And I suppose you cannot say why. That is correct, sir. How about some caviar? Any brand or type will do. That I can do.
Mr. Deeds once more entered the hallway outside the interrogation room. This time, the cameras were turned off after visual confirmation of Mr. Deeds' entry into the hall. 1 minute later, the cameras were turned back on, but Mr. Deeds had already returned to the interrogation room at this point.
That was considerably faster, Mr. Deeds. It only took you 32 seconds, and the caviar is quite good. I am pleased to hear it, sir. One more thing before we end this session, Mr. Deeds. As you wish. I request that you assassinate Osama bin Laden. I am afraid that cannot be done at this time, Dr. Murph. Perhaps someone closer and less heavily guarded. Very well. Let's make it the gentleman in the next room over. Indeed.
Mr. Deeds once again entered the hallway. After visual confirmation, the cameras were momentarily turned off. When turned back on, they revealed the door to the next interrogation room down, shutting. The cameras in that interrogation room showed Mr. Deeds entering the room with a large buck knife hidden behind one arm. Mr. Deeds approached the waiting D-Class personnel and deftly slit his throat with one quick motion of the knife. Mr. Deeds watched as the D-Class personnel went through the motions of death, avoiding their attempts to grab him. Once the D-Class individual was visually presumed dead, Mr. Deeds returned to the interrogation room from whence he came.
The deed is done, then. Indeed, sir. Here is the knife I used as proof. Why could you do this thing, but not the other? I cannot say, sir, except to note that I simply knew one was impossible while the other was not.
Is he limited due to his actual physical capabilities? Like, that's why maybe he's able to take on the D-Class personnel. Maybe that D-Class was smaller, weaker than them. If that was the case, that would kind of make sense. As far as trying to go against Osama bin Laden, because he's being protected by most likely people with AK-47s, RPGs, and that's probably why. I mean, so at that point, it would probably just be pointless for him to do that, because he would just keep getting killed over and over. So if it is based on his physicality, I could definitely kind of see that being at least one of the reasons. And maybe also with the Corvette, just because how would he get a Corvette down there? Right? I mean, but then again, teleportation, so I don't know. Kind of making assumptions here.
So you don't know how you know things like my last name or my title or whether or not a certain task is possible. That is correct, sir. Very well. I believe we're done here for now. But I do need to consult with my colleagues on some points. Please wait here until I return. Certainly.
Dr. Mirth and Agent Graves leave the room. Dr. Mirth returns 2 hours later. Video surveillance shows that Mr. Deeds did not move during this interval.
Mr. Deeds, my colleagues and I had some disagreements about you. That's most unfortunate. We feel these disagreements can only be resolved by examining you more intensely. Certainly, Dr. Muff. To be specific, we'd like to examine you internally. Certainly, Dr. Muff. We'd like to do an autopsy. Ah, shall I kill myself for you? And since you will be examining my internal organs, do you have a preferred method for my death? Yes, if that's possible. Oh, certainly it is possible, Dr. Murph. Might I suggest having me cut my own throat so that I am exsanguinated? The buck knife from when I killed Mr. is conveniently at hand, and although other methods are of course available, they would either take longer or damage my organs such that they are no longer accurately representative of my pre-mortem state. I suppose that would be acceptable. Wait. Yes, Dr. Muff? Before you do it, you will come back afterward. correct? I'm sorry, Dr. Mirth. I don't quite understand. After the pawn shop incident, when you were killed, you came back to life afterward when Sergeant Bell. If you say so, Dr. Mirth. Will you come back to life again? I have no idea, Dr. Mirth. If I did before, then presumably I will again, unless something has changed. Have you any further questions before I make the incision? I do recommend you step back, as I would hate for my blood to soil your clothing. Death throes can be untidy. No, I suppose not. Carry on. Very well, Dr. Mirth. And in the event that I don't come back to life, it has been a genuine pleasure to serve you.
Mr. Deeds then
Before he gets to that, as far as slicing his throat, then again, the way the Volgun does his, since he has a script, I try not to go past from what he's read. So he might explain it here, but I wonder if he actually feels pain. Like, say, when he's slitting his throat right now, is he going to feel it, or if it's just kind of like he'll wait there until he bleeds out type deal?
sliced his own throat and bled to death. A post-mortem examination of the body revealed it to be ordinary in every way, though it is noted that Mr. Deeds was not suffering from any noticeable disease or physical condition, and was in fact in near perfect health at the time of death. The contents of his stomach consisted of Southern-style sweet tea, normal stomach acids.
Wait, it said not suffering from noticeable disease or physical condition. It didn't necessarily say he couldn't feel pain, it just meant like he wasn't... He didn't have a broken bone. He didn't have any thing that was physically ailing him. Obviously, now for the throat slash, but it didn't technically say that he felt pain, or that he did or didn't feel pain. I could be wrong about that though, because they didn't specifically say that. They just said physical condition.
No more. Mr. Deeds' body was then left on the operating table while the lights in the room and cameras were turned off. All personnel left the room, and upon return, no trace of Mr. Deeds, be it blood on the instruments used or other physical traces such as organs removed, let alone the actual body, remained. Further ringing of SCP-662 resulted in Mr. Deeds' appearance after 3 minutes. He showed no signs of injury and was well dressed once more in a modern uniform commonly worn by butlers. As expected, he could not explain how he managed to survive. He was then ordered to give Dr. Mirth a full-body massage, which he performed much to Dr. Mirth's satisfaction. Dr. Mirth claimed, "It was the best damn rub-down I've ever had. My back pain is completely gone."
So it does say that he doesn't explain how he managed to survive and come back. But does he have the recollection of every time he dies, like everything before that at least, of what he can remember? Does he remember it in the next life that he gets brought back? So obviously not the things that he can't remember, but everything else. Like, does he remember his interviews with Dr. Mirth?
Lucky son of a bitch. Acquisition report.
Did he just say lucky son of a bitch?
SCP-662 was discovered in the possession of a petty thief and grave robber in USA. The thief was in the process of selling SCP-662 to a pawnshop in the mentioned town when the bell was accidentally rung by the pawnshop attendant. Mr. Deeds appeared from the storage area behind the counter and promptly addressed the attendant. Believing that he was about to be robbed by the two men, the attendant overreacted and managed to get hold of a sawed-off shotgun from under the counter. Mr. Deeds was fatally wounded by the attendant and died on scene. The thief escaped, but was apprehended by Foundation agents after a week-long search of the surrounding towns. Under questioning, the thief revealed that he found the bell in its box in the grave located in the outskirts of the above-mentioned town. He was then remitted for D-Class personnel assignment and subsequently perished during testing of SCP. The bell did not come under the purview of the Foundation until after the crime and subsequent transport of Mr. Deeds' body to the local morgue. After the disappearance of the body from the morgue, an agent was sent to investigate the possible outbreak of SCP. or other unknown necrotic reinvigorating cause. Mr. Deeds reappeared in the case file item storage room of the local constabulary after the bell was handled by Sergeant. He was quickly apprehended and Agent took him into custody 3 hours after reappearance under the guise of an FBI agent. When the handcuffed Mr. Deeds once again disappeared, the agent intuited that the bell itself may have something to do with the string of incidents, and after acquiring it and testing his proved hunch, brought the bell back to for further testing. Agent awarded an official Foundation pat on the back plaque for his handling of the incident and lack of self-serving interest once he discovered what the bell and Mr. Deeds were capable of.
Alright, let's go ahead and talk about that for a minute. Never got a good reason. Or obviously there probably isn't even a reason as to why he can't remember the things that he gets. Kind of the conditions. I thought it was going to be dealing as far as him being able to cause harm to someone or something, but that got disproven with the D class. Now, the only far back origins, there was 2 key points. He mentioned buggies and horses, I believe. He did mention buggies, so I know that. But he was also found in the grave by that person who was trying to sell it at the pawn shop. This is one of those SCPs where a lot of it, or at least things that I would kind of start thinking of, were kind of answered within minutes of me thinking them. So there wasn't a whole lot, too much speculating on a lot of stuff besides the stuff that at this point I already know there's probably not going to be an answer. But I can see, as far as testing goes, this could be a good SCP to have him test on certain other SCPs. 682. Wonder what 049 would actually think about this 662. Would he view him as a human? Someone who has quote-unquote pestilence? It's only up to if these ever have a crossover, but definitely could be very beneficial. I think not even considering it safe, maybe a Thomio at this point, right? Other than that, I got pretty much everything else I want to say during the video, so that's going to be it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, really does help me a lot. Hit that dislike button if you didn't like it. It helps me for the channel. If you're curious to see what's coming up next, check the description down below. You're going to see a description of about 5 videos. Top to bottom is going to be how I view them. But until then, I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.